steps into it. Pass is caught. Diggs! Sideline! Touchdown! Unbelievable!
Pass is intercepted at the goal line by Malcolm Butler. Unreal. Touchdown! Kansas City! Damian Williams runs to immortality and will be remembered forever in the Chiefs' kingdom.
Yes, hello everybody and welcome in again to another Sunday evening here on KC Radio 97.7 FM for some Talkin American Footy with me, Brent Sternberg, and then there were four teams left standing on the road to Super Bowl 55 in Tampa Bay in only a couple of short weeks' time now after the divisional round meant that four teams were eliminated and four teams who will go toe-to-toe tomorrow morning on Championship Sunday, Championship Monday, our time, and what a terrific divisional round. It was a couple of teams returning to their conference championship games for the first time in a long, long time, and a couple of teams that were there only last year. We're going to just hold off on the preview of the championship games for a little while. I'm going to go back and have a look at the divisional round and recap what happened last week as we normally do. And then in the couple of segments in between, I want to do something different, but I'll get to that when we cross that bridge. First of all, like we normally do, go back and have a look in the first segment here at what happened in the week preceding. And of course, this time around, it was the divisional round, 4 games, 8 teams, only 4 spots remaining for the championship games in the AFC and the NFC. And on Sunday morning, the divisional round kicked off with the Green Bay Packers, the impressive as ever Green Bay Packers getting a relatively comfortable win in the end over the LA Rams at home at Lambeau Field, 32-18 winners, the Packers, and with that win they advanced to their second consecutive NFC championship game and their first at Lambeau Field since 1996, and of course that makes it the first home NFC championship game of Aaron Rodgers' career. That has been a talking point this week. A-Rod playing in his first ever home NFC championship game. He was very good again last week against the Rams' number 1 ranked defense. His final numbers in that one, 23 of 36, 296 yards and a couple of touchdowns. It was their running game as well, the Packers, that had an enormous effect in this one. All three, really, of their running backs had a big impact, a big effect on this game. Aaron Jones had the best numbers in terms of the box score. He had 14 rushing attempts for 99 yards and a touchdown. Jamal Williams, 12 total carries, 65 rushing yards, and A.J. Dillon, 6 attempts with 27 rushing yards. All told, they had 188 rushing yards. The Packers, they dominated on the ground. In Green Bay, they gained 400. This is total offense, 484 yards on the league's number 1 defense that had averaged, the LA Rams, that is their defense in the 16 regular season games, they had given up on average 281.9 yards total, which of course was the best mark in the league, and the Packers just absolutely had their way with that. For the Rams, they were just simply outclassed, unfortunately, in this one. Jared Goff, he finished this game 21 of 27, 174 yards and a touchdown. Jared Goff, admittedly, didn't actually look too bad in this game. He was wearing a glove on either hand, including, obviously, his throwing hand after having thumb surgery only, I think it was 18 days prior to this game. He made some pretty good throws. The box score there with only 174 yards doesn't tell the full story. But I thought he actually played a little bit better than people thought he would. Cam Akers, he was a pretty big focal point of the Rams offense again. 18 rushing total carries, 18 rushing attempts, 90 yards and a touchdown. The Rams defense had given up 300 or more total yards in a game just 6 times this season, with a high of 390. And then, of course, the Packers put up 484 on them. The Rams, they missed several opportunities, including back-to-back chances for interceptions at the end of the first half last week, which could have changed that game. The Packers ended up kicking a field goal on that on that drive, but they could have come away with a takeaway. The Rams, Aaron Donald was extremely upset after that game. He played only 39 of 72 snaps. Aaron Donald, 54.2% of the snaps, which was well below the average of a player who usually hovers between sort of 80 and 90% of snaps played in each game. He finished with just one tackle, Aaron Donald, and a single pressure with no quarterback hits. So, he certainly wasn't at his best. It looked like he wasn't at his best, and the production suggests that he wasn't. So you can understand why he was so upset. Big off-season coming for the Rams. Do they continue ahead with quarterback Jared Goff? Sean McVay, after this game and in the couple of days after this game, actually said that, he sort of left the door open as to what they were going to do at the quarterback position. He certainly didn't double down, saying that Jared Goff was their starting quarterback. So there's a lot of teams that need quarterbacks in the off-season, and the Rams may very well find themselves in that camp as well. The second game on Sunday was the Buffalo Bills at home beating the Baltimore Ravens 17-3. In doing so, the Bills win through to their first AFC Championship game since 1993, if you don't mind. This was a pretty low-scoring affair. It finished actually tied 3 apiece at halftime. Baltimore kicker Justin Tucker missed 2 field goals. He hit both uprights in this game. He'd never missed a field goal inside 50 yards in a playoff game prior to that encounter with the Bills. Buffalo kicker Tyler Bass also missed 2 field goals. It really was not good conditions in Buffalo for the field goal kickers. It was blowing an absolute gale. The Bills' defense kept Lamar Jackson to 34 rushing yards and kept Baltimore's offense to 148 rushing yards total. Of course, that was the number 1 rushing attack in the league. The game turned on a Taron Johnson interception that he returned for a 101-yard pick 6, which was the longest in playoff history. The Ravens never really looked like getting back into the game after that. They were in the red zone and knocking on the door, and then Lamar Jackson threw a back-breaking interception that went all the way down the field in the opposite direction to the house. Lamar Jackson only, I think on the next drive after that, actually was knocked out of the game with a concussion in the third quarter after a bad snap. He chased it all the way back to his own end zone and then tried to throw it out of bounds, and in doing so, copped a big hit, which knocked him out of that one. He was replaced by rookie Tyler Huntley, but that really was the Ravens done after that. Josh Allen was pretty good in this one, 23 of 37, 206 yards and a touchdown. Only 3 rushing yards, though. So they did manage to keep him in check, Baltimore, but in a low-scoring affair, it was the Bills who beat Baltimore, and won through to the AFC Championship game, and they're back on Championship Sunday for the first time in, 27 years. So the Bills are back in town. In the Monday morning games, the early game was Cleveland and Kansas City. Kansas City just getting home in that one, 22-17. Coming out firing the Chiefs, they grabbed a 13-3 lead before the Browns could even blink, but the Browns responded, leading a drive that ended just inches from a touchdown when Rashard Higgins dove towards the end zone and fumbled the ball into the end zone, and then it went out, of course, the side of the end zone for a touchback. Mayfield, he strike to Rashard Higgins, saw the receiver pick up 26 yards before diving toward the pylon, extending the ball towards the goal line just as Chiefs safety Daniel Sorensen arrived to make a head-first contact with the receiver, forcing the fumble that rolled out of bounds in the end zone. And, of course, the Chiefs got the ball back. That brings that touchback rule into question. Twitter actually absolutely blew up after that rule. That really was a bit of a backbreaker at the time for Cleveland, who were really starting to rock down the field. And then, at the 1-yard line, a turnover. And not just a turnover, but the opposition gets the ball and gets it at the 25-yard line. And not just any offense, of course, with Patrick Mahomes as well. So it brings that touchback rule into question. And to be honest, I won't be surprised if they have a look at that rule in the off-season and perhaps even amend it. That play would have sunk Cleveland Browns teams of the past 20 years, but Baker Mayfield and the Browns overcome that bit of bad luck, bad fortune. They overcame as well a second-half opening interception to lead an 8-play, 77-yard touchdown drive to cut Kansas City's lead to 19-10, and followed that with an 18-play, 75-yard march to make it a 5-point game with plenty of time left in the fourth quarter. Back up, Chad Henne was forced into action due to Patrick Mahomes going into concussion protocol. And when that happened, Browns fans everywhere thought that it might be their day when Chad Henne fired a pass into the end zone and into the waiting arms of Cleveland safety Carl Joseph. It was a really weird concussion that Mahomes suffered. Actually, it wasn't your typical sort of head-to-head contact or head hitting the ground. It was a really weird, almost like a choker hold or even a whiplash. But he left the field and didn't come back on. And Chad Henne actually made a couple of plays to save the Chiefs in the end. Kevin Stefanski, though, for the Browns, the decision to punt the ball back to the Chiefs on 4th and 9 while trailing 22-17 with less than 5 minutes to play was an interesting call after the game. Kevin Stefanski said that it was just too far to go to justify making that call. And then the Chiefs, as I said, they got the ball back, and Chad Henne, a 13-yard run on 3rd and 14, was a massive play. The Browns defense really should have had something to say about that, but they couldn't. And then one-upped it with a quick pass to Tyreek Hill on 4th and 1 to ice a thrilling win for the Chiefs. That was a pretty ballsy play. I know a lot of people were praising Andy Reid after that game when they quite easily could have punted it away and back their defense to get a stop. But on 4th and 1 at midfield, they went for it. I know Tony Romo and Jim Nantz did not expect them to go for that. I don't think anybody did, and then they did, and that's what's great about the Chiefs. They, you don't really have to be that attacking when you've got someone who's so good in Patrick Mahomes, but they do attack you, and that makes them such a difficult team to beat. Baker Mayfield in this game for the Browns was terrific. I've been on Baker Mayfield's case a little bit this year, but in the 2 playoff games, the win over Pittsburgh and the loss to Kansas City, he's been unbelievable, really. Against the Chiefs, 23 of 37, 204 yards, a touchdown and an interception, albeit a poor interception, but he made some big-time throws in that game, Baker, to keep the chains moving for the Browns. But ultimately, it was the Chiefs who won, and they will now host their 3rd straight AFC Championship game at home, the first AFC team to do that. So winners over the Browns, 22-17. And then the final game was Tampa Bay and New Orleans, and it was the Bucs who come out on top in that one, 30-20. Credit has to go to Todd Bowles and the defense in this one for the Bucs. They picked off Drew Brees 3 times and forced a fumble. The turnovers led to 21 points on 3 of those 4 takeaways, all of Tampa Bay's touchdowns. So you take away those 3 touchdowns, they only scored 9 points. For the Saints, their last 4 possessions went like this: a fumble, a punt, interception, and an interception. For the Bucs, it was linebacker Devin White who was the star of the show with 11 tackles, a tackle for loss, an interception, and a fumble recovery. He was absolutely enormous, and he'll have to be so again tomorrow against Green Bay if there's any chance. The Bucs, Tampa Bay, they signed Tom Brady to finally make a deep postseason run, and that come to fruition. Brady was pretty good. 18 of 33 passing for 199 yards, 2 touchdowns, and of course a rushing touchdown as well, a quarterback sneak. On the other side, Drew Brees finished 19 of 34 passing for only 134 yards, 3.9 yards per attempt with 1 touchdown and 3 interceptions. He didn't attempt a pass of more than 20 yards downfield. Jameis Winston threw the only touchdown of the contest for the Saints, a 56-yard touchdown toss to Traquan Smith. Drew Brees is expected to retire, and it's a really, if he does, which looks for all money like he will, a really unfortunate ending for Drew Brees and the future Hall of Fame quarterback. But it just goes to show, the great quarterbacks, their careers don't always have that sort of storybook ending. I know Peyton Manning and a few other guys have won the Super Bowl and gone out, champions in their final game. But this is a real sort of, wake-up call to people that players don't always go out on top. So a disappointing finish for his career, and another disappointing end to the Saints season. It's going to be a really interesting off-season for them to see what they do at the quarterback position for a team that's otherwise, championship ready. So just to recap, the winners in the divisional round going through to the respective championship games: the Packers over the Rams, the Bills over Baltimore, Kansas City over Cleveland. They go back to the AFC Championship game, and the Bucs, who had been beaten by the Saints twice during the regular season, they turn the tables on New Orleans, and they are back to the NFC Championship game with Tom Brady, of course, for the first time in 18 years. I'm going to have a look at the AFC and NFC Championship games and preview them in a little bit. I'm going to delay that because I want to do something first over these next couple of segments, and I'm going to explain what I would like to do when we return on Talking American Footy with me, Brent Sternberg. You're listening to Casey Radio 97.7 FM. Back soon. Welcome back, everybody. You're listening to Talking American Footy with me, Brent Sternberg, here on this Sunday evening on Casey Radio 97.7 FM, where before the break we went back and had a look at everything that happened in the divisional round last week, which of course left 4 teams standing on the road to Super Bowl 55. And after the divisional round last week, the AFC and NFC Championship games were decided, or the contests were decided anyway, leaving the 2 games tomorrow. We're set for Green Bay at home hosting the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. We're going to get Tom Brady and Aaron Rodgers in the playoffs for the first ever time. Very, very exciting. That game will be the first game up tomorrow. And then the night game, the evening game, the late evening game, will see the Buffalo Bills back in the AFC Championship game for the first time in 27 years, travel to Arrowhead Stadium to play Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs. So after tomorrow, this time tomorrow definitely, we will have Super Bowl 55, the matchup, all sorted. Still have to wait a couple of weeks, which is always a little bit annoying. But the matchup will be set, and we look forward to Championship Sunday's action tomorrow. Normally in the second segment here, I preview the Monday morning action to come. I'm going to put that on hold for just a moment. What I want to do now over this next segment, probably the next one too, to be honest, is go through the teams that have been eliminated from playoff action already. And I want to have a look at where they sort of sit heading into next season. Next week, I'm going to do this with all of the 18 teams that didn't make the playoffs. And I will have a couple of teams to catch up on, of course, teams that lose tomorrow. So I'll do 20 teams all up. But over the next couple of segments, I'm going to have a look at the 10 teams that have been eliminated from playoff action and have a look at where things sit with them, beginning with the teams that were eliminated on wildcard weekend and beginning with the first team that was eliminated from the playoffs this season, and that is the Indianapolis Colts. Who are a team in a really interesting position with, of course, Philip Rivers having retired during the week. Really sad to see him hang up the boots. It turns out that he was one and done in Indianapolis, so ends a terrific career from Philip Rivers, and of course we'll all have the debate about whether or not he's a Hall of Famer. For my opinion, for what it's worth, I believe that he is. Whether or not he's a first ballot Hall of Famer is another discussion, but I think he is absolutely Hall of Fame worthy Philip Rivers. And they also, during the week, the Colts had their left tackle, Anthony Castonzo, retire as well. So there you go. 2 of the most important offensive positions will have to be filled this offseason, quarterback and left tackle. They lose as well. This is not official yet, but it looks like they're going to lose offensive coordinator Nick Sirianni, who looks like he may pick up the head coaching gig in Philadelphia. Of course, Philadelphia have also interviewed Josh McDaniels, the New England Patriots coordinator, but Adam Schefter and a couple of guys around the place are reporting that Nick Sirianni might be their guy for the Eagles, so they will also have to replace the offensive play calling. So they're going to have a new play caller on offense and a new quarterback, the Colts, next season. They're free agents. They've got a few guys that they would like to hang on to. They've got Jacoby Brissett, so their backup quarterback is a free agent as well. So Philip Rivers and Jacoby Brissett look like they may be gone. Wide receivers T.Y. Hilton and Zach Pascal, they were their top 2 receivers this season. The Colts defensive end Justin Houston and Danico Autry, who's had a pretty good couple of seasons in Indianapolis, Danico Autry. Cornerback Xavier Rhodes, who come across from Minnesota and really had a form revival this year, Xavier Rhodes, and also running back Marlon Mack, who of course tore his ACL in week 1 this season, and that allowed Jonathan Taylor to have the season that he had. So a few important guys that they'll be looking to re-sign. The good news for the Colts is that they have a lot of salary cap space. In fact, the second most. They've got just under $65 million, $64.8 million for the Colts. So there's going to be some guys they want to re-sign and some holes to fill as well for an offense that finished 10th overall. But of course, the big question is, what do they do at quarterback? They've only got one guy at the moment on the roster, and that's Jacob Eason, who they took with a mid-round draft pick last year, with Phillip Rivers retiring and Jacoby Brissett, who may well be in demand this off-season in a lot of teams that need quarterbacks, and the supply does not meet the demand. Had a good season on defense as well. The Colts, they finished 8th. They had 40 sacks, which was 12th, I should say, and a +2 turnover differential. But this is one of the most, for mine anyway, one of the most interesting teams to watch this offseason, because they have an otherwise, I think, contender caliber roster. And they have a lot of money to be able to fill some holes that they need. They've got a terrific offensive line, even if Anthony Castonzo won't be back, which he won't be back. But they've got a good young running back in Jonathan Taylor, who started to come on this year. The wide receiver from USC, Michael Pittman. The defense has some really nice pieces, led, of course, by Darius Leonard. For a team that has as much salary cap space as they do, they don't have that many holes. What do they do at quarterback, though? There was a big name come available today. Detroit Lions quarterback Matt Stafford says that he wants out. He wants to be traded. The Colts have not shied away, and general manager Chris Ballard has not shied away from making trades for big players. Of course, he traded away the first-round pick last year for DeForest Buckner. I would not be surprised if they go in that direction as well and give up their first-round pick for Matt Stafford. And maybe another early pick as well, and try and give up draft capital for Stafford and then fill a couple of their big needs with their salary cap space. If they do that, I think they can go to Super Bowl contention very quickly if they weren't already Indianapolis. I think Matt Stafford is a better option for them at quarterback than Phillip Rivers. So if they get Phillip Rivers and spend wisely in the offseason in free agency, I think this is a very interesting team to watch, and I think they can jump. They won 11 games this year anyway, and they were very close to beating arguably the hottest team in the NFL in Buffalo in the first week of the playoffs. So if they get Matt Stafford and get a couple of other big names in free agency, look out for the Colts. The next team I wanted to have a look at, Seattle. It's a very interesting offseason for them, the Seahawks. The big question for them is, how do they not waste the next period of Russell Wilson's prime? Of course, he started like a house on fire this season, Russell Wilson, and they sort of went off the boil. They fired offensive coordinator Brian Schottenheimer, so that maybe gives you an indication that they want to get better in terms of play calling on offense. Don't have a whole lot of salary cap space, $2.7 million. And they've got a few free agents that they'd want to re-sign as well. Not a whole lot, but some important guys on the defense, like linebacker KJ Wright, who's become a stalwart on that defense. Cornerback Quinton Dunbar as well. And another cornerback, in fact, actually Shaquille Griffin. So this is a team that their offense finished 8th all up. Really hot start, but then sputtered, of course, down the stretch. And a defense that finished 27th. The big question for them is, how do they get better on defense? They're not going to get anywhere near a championship with the 27th ranked defense. They had 46 sacks this season, which was 7th, which surprised me when I saw that. They were a team that for a long time this season struggled to get after the quarterback, and then they got in Carlos Dunlap, who helped, and then finished 7th in the league for sacks. 15th, though, in takeaways with only 22. So they have to get better on defense, and they have to get better on the offensive line. They've got DK Metcalf as a weapon, and Tyler Lockett as well, who both emerged this season. But they've got their quarterback who they know they can win with, but they've got some interesting decisions that they have to make this offseason, Seattle, including getting better basically everywhere on defense if they want to challenge for the Super Bowl. They're going to be in a really tough division again next year, Seattle. So let's see how they improve in the offseason. The next team, Washington, yet another team that have a question mark at the quarterback position. What do they do if quarterback Alex Smith doesn't return? Of course, there's rumors that he may retire. If he does return, then I think they can perhaps win some games with Alex Smith. They've also hired a new general manager. They hired former Panthers GM Marty Herney. They do have a bunch of salary cap as well, 35 million, which is fifth most in the league. They got some guys they need to re-sign though, starting with All-Pro guard Brandon Sheriff, pass rusher Ryan Kerrigan as well, cornerback Fabian Moreau too. The offense finished low down. I think they finished 30th in the end. How do they get more explosive? Is the big question. They found Antonio Gibson, who had a great rookie year. They got Terry McLaurin and Jordan. The tight end there, whose name just escapes me at the moment. Forgive me. But the question may well be who's the quarterback. Of course, Dwayne Haskins is gone. They've got Kyle Allen, Alex Smith. Who knows? Will they be a team to draft a quarterback in the first round? Will they look for perhaps Matt Stafford as well? There's going to be a few teams interested in Matt Stafford. Not too many question marks on a defense which finished second in the league, and they're good and they're young. They had 47 sacks, which was 6th in the league. They did have a -4 turnover differential, though. That may have been as a result of their offense giving away the ball a little bit too much. I don't think this Washington team is too far away. They have a pretty good offensive line. They need to keep Brandon Sheriff. They need to sort out what they're going to do long-term at quarterback, and they need to get more explosive on the offense. But the defense is just about set. They do have some question marks in the back end, but this is a team where if they can just get if they can put a few pieces in place in the puzzle, I don't think they're that far away. But of course, they need to work out what they're going to do at quarterback above all else. Then we have Tennessee, who, of course, have their quarterback and they have their running back. They have their identity on offense. But how do they bridge the gap? They won 11 games this year, one season removed from playing in the AFC Championship game. Arthur Smith, their offensive coordinator, has gone as well. He's gone to Atlanta. It's a team who are in the red in terms of salary cap, -7 million. That'll be able to change with a few maneuvers for some free agents as well. A couple that they'll be keen to keep. Corey Davis, who had a breakout year. Tight end Jonnu Smith. Cornerback Desmond King, who they, of course, traded for from the Chargers. And linebacker Jayon Brown. The offense finished third in the league, but can they diversify and become more explosive? They are a running offense. They've got A.J. Brown as a legitimate wide receiver, but can they find some more guys that can get down the field and help them sort of move the ball down the field via Ryan Tannehill's arm and not just becoming one-dimensional and running the ball? Got to get better on defense as well. They finished 28th. Got to get better rushing the passer. 19 sacks this season, which was the third fewest, and that would have been even worse if it weren't for a 4-sack display in Week 17 against the Texans. So an interesting off-season coming for the Titans. They've got their quarterback and they've got some other pieces in place, but they must get better on defense if they want to challenge. And the other team, Chicago, another team that need to work out what they're going to do at quarterback. On a roster that otherwise appears ready to contend. Defensive coordinator Chuck Pagano retired. They're in the red as well in terms of salary cap, -10 million. Free agents, notable free agents include quarterback Mitch Trubisky. Interesting to see what they do with him. Wide receiver Allen Robinson, who will have his fans and his suitors in the free agency market when that comes open. Kick returner as well, called Darrell Patterson. Offense finished 26th. That's because they need to get better at quarterback. That's the main reason there. Defense finished 11th, though, 18th in takeaways, 25th, and only 35 sacks. So overall, their defense finished quite highly, but they didn't have a lot of takeaways and they didn't have a lot of sacks. So I feel like the Bears are a team who, if they can sort out that quarterback position, then this team otherwise is pretty good. They need offensive line help, but they don't need as much as some other teams that were eliminated in the first week of the playoffs. So I'm going to take another break, and when I return, I'm going to have a look at the other 5 teams that have been eliminated in the playoffs to date. When we return on Talking American Footy with me, Brent Sternberg, you're listening to Casey Radio 97.7 FM. Back soon. Welcome back, everybody. You're listening to Talking American Footy with me, Brent Sternberg, on this Sunday evening here on Casey Radio 97.7 FM, the night before Championship Sunday. We've got the 2 AFC and NFC Championships coming up tomorrow, and this time tomorrow we will know the Super Bowl combatants. I'm going to get to the preview of those 2 games in a little while. But what we've been doing before the break is gone through and had a look at all the teams that were or have been eliminated so far in the playoffs, including the teams that were eliminated in the divisional round. The Super Wildcard weekend round. We'll get to the 4 teams that were eliminated last week in the divisional round in just a moment, but we have one more to get to. One more team that was eliminated in the wildcard weekend round, and probably the most interesting team just about of all the teams that have been eliminated so far. That is the Pittsburgh Steelers. Where to for this team with issues at quarterback? We still don't know if Ben Roethlisberger will be back next year. It looks like he will be. He did say a few weeks ago that he wants to return. But it's a big salary cap hit. I think about $40 million in total for a team at the moment. As things currently stand, they're $34 million over the cap. So they are under all sorts of salary cap pressure, the Pittsburgh Steelers. They fired offensive coordinator Randy Finkner. So they're going to have a new play caller on offense next season. They've also got a bunch of free agents that they have to resign, and they're all starters, and they have no money. They got pass rusher Bud Dupree, who tore his knee up halfway through the season, starting left tackle Alejandro Villanueva, starting cornerback Mike Hilton, number 1 wide receiver Juju Smith-Schuster, number 1 running back James Conner. So this is going to be a big offseason for the Steelers. They can't sign all of those guys. They may not be able to sign any of them. So some interesting decisions. Of course, all started by what they do, at quarterback. They did sign Dwayne Haskins during the week. I don't know if you guys saw that, but that's interesting. Interesting call from the Steelers. That's a low risk, I guess, high reward transaction. The offense this season just wrapped up. They finished 25th. The big question is, how do they fix the run game? They finished dead last in the run game. So there's been a lot of people talk about, they may be a team looking to draft running back perhaps in round 1, but ultimately this is a team that's going to have a lot of needs come the draft time. They may not have as many needs on defense. A defense that finished 3rd overall, 1st in sacks though with 56, and 2nd in the turnover differential with 27. I do sometimes wonder how many games would this Pittsburgh team have won if they had a defense that was even just borderline top 10 and not one of, if not the best in the league. 3rd in terms of yardage, but 1st in sacks and 2nd in turnover. So a big off-season coming for the Pittsburgh Steelers. This might be the most important off-season for the Steelers since they drafted Ben Roethlisberger, 16 seasons ago. So it's going to be an off-season full of landmines for the Steelers, and they're going to have to avoid them. We'll see if they're back in contention next season. For the teams that were eliminated last week in the divisional round, first team, the LA Rams. And again, what do they do at quarterback? Do they stick with the struggling Jared Goff or move on? Of course, he didn't have a great season statistically, Jared Goff, and Sean McVay certainly didn't throw the support behind him in the press conference after their loss to the Packers last week. They do lose defensive coordinator Brandon Staley. He goes across town. He's going to coach the LA Chargers next season. Of course, Brandon Staley was the coordinator of the number 1 defense this season. He now goes across LA to the Chargers. They hire former Falcons interim head coach, though, Raheem Morris, as their new defensive coordinator. So in comes Raheem Morris to coach the number 1 defense from this season just gone. They're another team in the red in terms of salary cap, $25.5 million over the cap. Notable free agents for the Rams, pass rusher Leonard Floyd, who come to LA this season from Chicago and had himself a pretty good year. He might price himself out of Hollywood. Starting guard Austin Blythe, starting cornerback Troy Hill, tight end Gerald Everett, starting safety John Johnson, and pass rusher Samson Ebukam. So some guys that they'll be pretty keen to hang on to there. The offense, even with all the struggles from with Jared Goff, they finished 11th. The question is, though, can they make the jump with Jared Goff, or do they bite the bullet and move on? He's got a very difficult contract to move on from Jared Goff. Of course, they signed him to big money only about 18 months or so ago. Defense, like I've said, they finished number 1, 11th in turnovers, -3 differential, though 22nd. That had a lot to do with, of course, Goff and the offense giving the ball away. 2nd in sacks with 53. So the big thing for the Rams this season, they have enough. They have enough in the certainly on defense and throughout the roster, but I do wonder if they'll be tempted to try and get the best out of this roster and get the best out of this roster now by moving on at quarterback. I can't see too many teams, though, that'll be interested in picking up Jared Goff with his salary cap hit. So they're another team in the NFC West to watch. The LA Rams, another really interesting team to watch as well is Baltimore. How do they go to this next level with Lamar Jackson? This is a team that has been one of the best regular season teams over the last couple of off seasons, and then they have been found out in the playoffs. They've got 21.6 million, so they've got a little bit of money to play with, but they've got some guys out of contract and set to hit free agency. A couple of pass rushers, or 3 pass rushers actually. Matt Judon, Yannick Ngakoue, who they only traded for from the Vikings about a quarter of the way through the season, and Pernell McPhee. Running back Mark Ingram, who looks like he's been given his marching orders. Gus Edwards as well, another running back who I think ended the season as their second running back on the depth chart behind J.K. Dobbins, and defensive lineman Derek Wolfe. The offense finished 19th, first in rushing, excuse me, first in rushing, but last in passing. So how do they change that? They've got to try and get that back up to far more balanced. Anyway, the defense finished 7th, 22 turnovers, which was 17th in the league, and 39 sacks, which was 14th. I think this team, the first round pick in the draft, if they keep it, of course, is going to tell us a lot. I think it's going to tell us a lot in terms of what they do moving forward. If they take an interior offensive lineman, which they still need help in the middle of that offensive line, they will get Ronnie Stanley back at left tackle, so that'll help. That'll enable Orlando Brown to move back out to right tackle, but they do need help in the interior. If they draft an interior guy in round 1, I suggest that means they're going to double down and continue to build off the run and do all of that. If they draft a wide receiver, which I think may be the better thing to do, given the fact that, they really lack a true number 1 guy that can go and get the ball down the field. And this is a draft that is, absolutely littered with top-notch wide receivers. It's another really good draft for wide receivers. If they draft a wide receiver in round 1, I think that tells us a little bit about what they're going to do in terms of trying to help Lamar Jackson improve as a passer down the field. It's been 2 seasons in a row now, really disappointing seasons that have come to an end in playoff games where the opponents have shut down Lamar Jackson and the Ravens have had no answers. So they cannot be a team where if the defense manages to shut down Lamar Jackson, then they just go to water. They need to be able to throw the ball down the field. They need to be able to be dynamic, passing the ball down the field, and they need to be more versatile. They can't just assume that they're going to be able to run over teams, because that might work for 16 weeks in the regular season. But, as the cream starts to rise to the top and the oppositions get better and better throughout the playoffs, they're not going to be able to run over teams. And we saw that a couple of years ago with Tennessee, who shut down Lamar Jackson, and we saw that last week with the Buffalo Bills, who shut down Lamar Jackson. So they are an interesting team, another interesting team to watch in the offseason and what they do. They need to help Lamar Jackson down the field. A lot of it might come down to Lamar himself and how he just develops as a passer. I mean, he hasn't really developed as people had sort of hoped. He come into the league as a much better passer than people sort of realised, and that's sort of gone by the wayside a little bit as they've decided to sort of, be a team that just bulldozes over the opposition. But they need to get Lamar Jackson help at the wide receiver position. So interesting to see what they do this offseason, particularly in the draft. And the final team that was eliminated last week, another AFC North team, was the Cleveland Browns. Had a really good season, Cleveland. I mean, they won 11 games and they made it into the playoffs, and they ended their playoff drought after beating the Steelers in what was probably really the franchise's best win in many, many, many years. They do need to fix the defense, though. The question is, if they fix the defense, are they championship ready? This offense had a pretty good season led by Baker Mayfield. When you consider they had Odell Beckham out of the lineup for most of the year, and you wouldn't have even known. They had Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt go crazy. They had Rashard Higgins have a good season. particularly down the back end of the year. Donovan Peoples-Jones as well. They do have $21.4 million to play with, the Browns, so we'll see where they decide to spend that. Couple of important guys on the defense about to come out of contract. Pass rusher Olivier Vernon, who unfortunately tore his Achilles in that game against the Steelers in the wild card round. Cornerback Kevin Johnson as well, who's been the starter opposite Denzel Ward. Defensive tackle Larry Ogunjobi as well, who will have his fans in the free agency market, I suspect, as well as wide receiver Rashard Higgins. This is an offense that finished 16th, 3rd in rushing, 24th in passing. And the defense finished 17th, 22nd pass defense, 9th in run defense, 38 sacks, which it was 16th in the league. I mean, you consider they had Myles Garrett, who had a lot of sacks, and they only finished 16th. They did have a +5 turnover differential, though. That was 19th in the league. So it really is a middling defense that they need to get better. I think if they can find some help on that defense, then who knows how far Cleveland can go. It is a division that's in a little bit of a state of flux with the Steelers, who look like they might regress, the Ravens, who need some help as well, and Cincinnati, who are still building. So if they can get some more guys on that defense and Baker Mayfield continues to improve, maybe look out. I did say that was the final team, Cleveland. They're not the final team, of course. New Orleans were, and don't they have some decisions to make at quarterback, of course, with Drew Brees retiring. Who plays quarterback in a new era in New Orleans for a team that is good enough to contend? Brees is gone. It's a team that is almost $100 million over the salary cap with some big-name free agents that are out of contract. Tight end Jared Cook, defensive tackle Sheldon Rankin, safety Marcus Williams, pass rusher Trey Hendrickson, who led the team in sacks this season, and quarterback Jameis Winston as well, who could be an interesting one. The offense finished 12th, 5th in scoring, but the question is who orchestrates that offense in 2021 and beyond. The defense had a really good season. They finished 4th, a +9 turnover differential, which was 4th in the league, 18 interceptions, which was the equal most, and 45 sacks, which was 8th. I mean, the question is really, what do they do at quarterback? They played Taysom Hill for a few games, and I think they learnt that he's not the guy. He's a really good gadget guy, and he's a really good sort of mismatch guy to have, but he's not a starting quarterback. Do they go with Jameis Winston? I mean, like I mentioned, he's out of contract, and they don't really have any salary cap room to be able to go after someone like a Matt Stafford, I don't think, or maybe somebody else that comes available. I've seen them linked with maybe Deshaun Watson. That would be a dream scenario, but I don't see how that happens with a late first-round pick that will not entice Houston at all, and, no salary cap money, basically. So I have no idea what this team's going to do at quarterback next season, and it's a real shame and really interesting because they have a team otherwise that is ready to contend for a Super Bowl now. Really, I don't want to say this, in the back end of, Drew Brees having retired, but they may have been held back by Drew Brees. So big decisions looming for New Orleans and Sean Payton. So they were the teams that have been eliminated so far in the playoffs. I'm going to take my final break, and when we return, we're going to preview Championship Sunday when we return on Talkin American Footy with me, Brent Sternberg. You're listening to Casey Radio 97.7 FM. Back soon. Welcome back, everybody. You're listening to Talkin American Footy with me, Brent Sternberg, on this Sunday evening here on Casey Radio 97.7 FM, where before the break we've been going back and having a look at all of the teams that have been eliminated from the playoffs over the last 2 weeks and having a look at where things stand for them heading into the off-season. Next week I'm going to go through and have a look at all of the teams that didn't make the playoffs, and I'm going to have a look at big questions that they face going into the off-season in that week off that we have between Championship Sunday tomorrow and the Super Bowl. Of course, I'll have a couple of teams to catch up on, which will be the losers from tomorrow's game. So I'll have 20 teams in total, which I'll look at next week. But without further ado, let's bugger all of that and go and have a look at Championship Sunday, which is on tomorrow, and the 4 teams remaining, only 2 spots left for Super Bowl 55 in Tampa Bay in a couple of weeks' time. The first game tomorrow at 7:05 is Tom Brady and Aaron Rodgers playing each other in the playoffs for the first team ever. It's Tampa Bay who travel to Lambeau Field to take on the Green Bay Packers at a Lambeau Field where there is snow forecast. Of course, they played in the snow only a couple of weeks ago, the Packers, didn't they, against Tennessee. So Green Bay returned to the NFC Championship game for the second consecutive season. The Bucs returned for the first time since 2002. Of course, they won the Super Bowl that season, Tampa Bay. So when they get this far, they normally go all the way. Aaron Rodgers versus Tom Brady for the right to go to Super Bowl 55. This is going to be, I think this is going to be a really great game. I think it's going to be a classic. These two, of course, played each other back in Week 6, where Tampa Bay smashed Green Bay 38-10 at Raymond James Stadium. Of course, this one is at home for the Packers. And that was a game where Aaron Rodgers actually finished the game on the bench with the Bucs defense swarming. Aaron Rodgers has thrown 5 interceptions this season, 2 come in that game against Tampa Bay. And Rodgers, in fact, how about this? He's only thrown 3 pick sixes in his career, 2 of them against Tampa Bay, both of them at Raymond James Stadium, and one of them, of course, earlier this year. Bucs cornerback Jamal Dean picked off Aaron Rodgers and took it back for the end zone. Rodgers, he made poor decisions against the blitz last time out against Tampa, when he completed less than half of his passes and threw 0 touchdowns. Also, for the Bucs, cornerback Carlton Davis did as good a job as any cornerback has done this season on Devontae Adams. In that game when these two teams played, Devontae Adams, that is 6 catches for only 61 yards. Carlton Davis is going to have to do a job again tomorrow on who has been the best wide receiver in all of football this year. Bucs running back Ronald Jones had a fair old day against the Packers, against the Saints last week. No, sorry, against the Packers last time. Got my notes mixed up here. 23 attempts. Ronald Jones had 113 yards and 2 touchdowns against the Packers last time out. The Tampa Bay defense, they sacked Aaron Rodgers 5 times and forced 2 interceptions in that game. And they're coming off a 4-turnover game, of course, New Orleans last week. And all 3 touchdowns that were scored for the Bucs last week come off those turnovers. Tampa Bay struggled on offense last week. The O-line, the offensive line, the underrated Tampa Bay offensive line stood up, and they only allowed New Orleans, who have a brilliant front 4, 1 quarterback hit. So they're going to have to do the same tomorrow. The Bucs offensive line with, of course, Zadarius Smith and Rashawn Gary as well, former first-round pick out of Michigan. This is his 3rd season, I believe, or might be his 2nd, and he's really started to have an impact down the stretch this season, including last week against the LA Rams. So this Bucs offensive line, of course, with rookie right tackle Tristan Wirfs, they're going to have to stand up. They will have Andrew Stinney playing at, I think, right guard in place of the starter, Ali Marpet. So that's maybe a position where the Bucs may be able to exploit. News also for the Bucs, no Antonio Brown tomorrow, so that weakens their supporting cast around Tom Brady a little bit, although they've still got Mike Evans and Chris Godwin and, of course, Gronkowski and Cameron Brate, who was terrific. Brate was great last week against New Orleans. For me, I think where this game is going to be won and lost is how the Bucs defense plays. It's one thing to be able to force all of those turnovers last week against Drew Brees, who was on his last legs. They're going to have to do that again. And of course, they're playing against a Packers offense and a Packers quarterback in Aaron Rodgers, who will be pretty keen to get his first home NFC Championship game win, and Packers win through to just their 2nd Super Bowl appearance with Aaron Rodgers. I think if the Bucs are going to win this game, their defense need to do everything that they did last week, clamp down their secondary, clamp down on the weapons getting down the field in Devontae Adams and Alan Lazard as well. They have had the best run defense in the league this season, Tampa Bay, and they've also activated nose tackle Vita Vea off injured reserve, so he looks like he's going to play. So that's only going to boost them up front. So that's huge for the Bucs, literally huge. He is a big man. That's what the Bucs have to do. The Packers, they need to establish the run game, I think, and try and neutralize the pass rush. They're going to have Shaq Barrett and Jason Pierre-Paul coming after them. Todd Bowles, we know, is aggressive. He likes to dial up blitzes. He's probably going to have Devontae White coming at Aaron Rodgers as well. So this is a big game for the Packers offensive line, who, of course, are without David Bakhtiari, their Pro Bowl caliber left tackle. So they do have a bit of a weakness there. So that is where I think this game is going to be won and lost. How much pressure the Bucs can get on Aaron Rodgers. As for the other way around, the Packers obviously have a pretty good pass rush themselves. Tom Brady and the Bucs offense, they have been averaging over 30 points since week 13. So, it does look like this game could be a high-scoring affair because the Packers have had one of the highest-scoring offenses in the league this season. Like I said, it's going to be pretty cool conditions, though, and if it snows, that might bring the two high-flying offenses back to the pack a little bit, but really looking forward to this one. Tom Brady versus Aaron Rodgers. I think this is a huge game for Aaron Rodgers. This is a monster game for Aaron Rodgers. Of course, he's only played in one Super Bowl, and nobody would have thought when the Packers won that Super Bowl in 2010 that the Packers would take this long to get back to the Super Bowl. They haven't been back to the Super Bowl. So I think this is an enormous game for Aaron Rodgers and the Green Bay Packers. So too for Tom Brady, because they brought Tom Brady to Tampa Bay to go all in and to win a Super Bowl. So to fall at the final hurdle, the second last hurdle, that would be really gut-wrenching, especially with the little carrot dangling in front of them that is a home Super Bowl. I think this game, I think it's going to be close, but I'm more confident in this game that I am picking a winner in the next one. I think Green Bay will win, and I think the Packers will go through to Super Bowl 55, and we'll get to see Aaron Rodgers play in his second ever Super Bowl. And of course, he will be named the MVP, I would think, the night before in the NFL Honors Night. To the second game, Buffalo, who returned to the AFC Championship game for the first time in 26 years. They're at Kansas City. KC, first team to host 3 straight AFC Championship games. Buffalo, like I say, returned to the conference game for the first time since 1993. Battle in this one between two of the best, most exciting young quarterbacks in the league right now. These two also met in Week 6 this season, with Kansas City winning 26-17. That game was in Buffalo. A game in which Bills quarterback Josh Allen did not play very well. He finished 14 of 27, 122 yards, 2 touchdowns, and an interception. Plenty of talk this week about the health of Mahomes for Kansas City. But wideout Sammy Watkins, running back Clyde Edwards-Helaire, and linebacker Willie Gay are all key players who missed Sunday's divisional round win over the Browns, who could return this week as well. It's especially crucial for Kansas City to have Clyde Edwards-Helaire back, who absolutely flamed the Bills last time out. He had 161 rushing yards on 26 carries. Didn't score a touchdown, but they couldn't stop him in the last meeting between these two teams. Kansas City racked up 245 yards, all told on the ground in that Week 6 matchup. Darrell Williams was highly effective, logging 78 yards on 13 carries last week v Cleveland, so he might be the man to carry the load. Buffalo, they survived a playoff game against the Colts where their defense gave up 472 yards, and then against the Ravens, their offense managed only 220 yards and 10 points. So in the AFC title match, they are in the AFC title match without having played really a complete playoff game yet. So there is still some room to improve for the Bills. They need all of its offensive pieces to play well on Sunday. Cole Beasley and Gabriel Davis had 0 catches on 6 combined targets against the Ravens last week. Zach Moss as well won't play. He's lost for the rest of the season after going down to injury last week. For the Bills to win this one, like I alluded to, they need Josh Allen to play well. They can't have him play poorly like he did last time against the Chiefs. He needs to play well. They had a terrific back sort of couple of months of the season where they were the best team in football. Their 2 playoff games, they haven't quite been that hot, but they're going to have to turn things around tomorrow to beat this Kansas City team. The offense needs to move the ball. They must consistently move the ball, and they have to score. The only way they're going to win is to put up points. So the recipe's pretty simple, and then hope that their defense can get a stop or 2. I think they have the better defense in this game, Buffalo. So as long as Josh Allen and Stephon Diggs and the guys there on offense can move the ball and score points, then they'll be fine. They're in with a chance. For the Chiefs, it comes down to Patrick Mahomes and how he's feeling post-concussion. Had a bit of a toe injury as well, which, to be honest, that may hamper him more so than than the concussion. But the Chiefs, their defense needs to step up as well. They've really started to falter down the back end of the season, although they managed to get a couple of stops against Cleveland when they really needed to. So really looking forward to this game. I think this game is the more difficult one to pick because it's between two more evenly matched teams. I think it's going to be a high-scoring affair. I really want to pick Buffalo, but I think as long as Patrick Mahomes plays well, I think that they will win. So I am picking a Green Bay Kansas City matchup in Super Bowl 55, which will of course be a rematch of Super Bowl 1. So they're the two winners I think we will see from the two championship games tomorrow. Just quickly before I go, gang, we've had a couple of new head coaching gigs announced. Detroit, they hired Saints assistant head coach and tight ends coach Dan Campbell, and they've also signed a couple of their offensive and defensive coordinators as well, which is interesting. The week they signed their coaches and coordinators, the quarterback is gone. So that's interesting. I also did allude to earlier on that the LA Chargers hired Rams defensive coordinator Brandon Staley to be their next head coach, which surprised some people. And Philly looked like they're going to hire Colts offensive coordinator Nick Sirianni as their new head coach. Okie dokie, that's it for tonight, gang. If your team is playing tomorrow, good luck. I hope they win for you. Enjoy Championship Sunday if you're a neutral fan, and I'll see you next week to talk about everything that happened and also have a look ahead to Super Bowl 55, which will be, of course, 2 weeks later. Thanks for joining me this evening, gang. I'll see you next week from 10 p.m. on KC Radio 97.7 FM. Enjoy Championship Sunday, gang. Bye-bye.